Hello class. We are about to start module number 4. Module number 4 is going to be about the new sources of energy that we can use to sustain our planet. In those new sources of energies, we can divide it in two categories. Okay, the ones that are renewables and the other ones that are not renewables. The non-renewables refers basically to the fossil fuel energy that has been using in the past as the one that produce most of the energy that we consume in the planet. The non-renewable are the new sources that are supposed to be the alternative of the fossil fuel energy. You will find in your textbook this slide, which is really a very good picture of what is the culture of use energy in the world. For many years, there is a very strong and deep culture of using the fossil fuel energy as the ones that sustain most of the activities that we have in our life here in our planet. As you can see here, between the oil resources, the coal, and the natural gas that is also coming from oil, because these two are just different manifestations of the hydrocarbons that we have in the subsoil, they make almost 80% of the energy that we consume today. If you see here, this information is from 2018, but if you go to the website and you check that today, 2023, the distribution of consumption of energy is about the same thing. So we have a very strong culture of use fossil energy all over the world. That's why when we see the portion that contributes of the consumption, that is basically the renewables sources, really the consumption from them is very low. Now, most of this is used to produce electricity, which is the very big demand of energy in the world. So basically, most of the energy that we consume today is to generate power, to generate electricity. That is the one that really move all the system and instruction to produce all the activities that we have in our life taking place in our planet. So you can see that the electricity is produced basically in a very large percent for energy that is coming from the non-renewables, in other words, the fossil energy source, and there is another portions that are very important, but not as important as this one in here. So the message behind this slide is that there is all over the world a strong culture of using fossil fuel energy today. And most of that energy that we consume is used to produce the electricity, which is really the engine that moves everything that we have today. So most of the things that you are using today in our life, like smartphones, whatever, they need some source of power to be in work. And that power is coming from the electricity. So that's why electricity is so important. So basically, most of the energy that we use to produce electricity is based on fossil fuel energy. And that is a strong culture, as I mentioned before, to produce this type of energy today. So what happened with the non-renewables, like the ones that we have in here? some of them that we are going to comment. The hydropower that is coming from the aquatic ecosystem, that was something that we covered in module number 2. Bioenergy is something that we are going to introduce in this chapter, like the ethanol and all those kind of things. And also, and a very important one, that is non-renewable, conventional, but less dangerous in terms of creating disruptions in our climate, which is the nuclear power. Nuclear power has been used in the last century to produce electricity for so many years, especially in all this part of Europe, the western part, also the eastern parts of Europe. So countries like France, Germany, some of the countries like Norway and Sweden, they have used, besides another sources, the nuclear power in order to produce electricity. What happened in the last century, there was a very catastrophic event in the city of Chernobyl. Chernobyl was one of the regions between Belarus and Ukraine at that time, in which all this region belongs to the Union Soviet. And there was here an event that was so catastrophic in one of the nuclear powers of Chernobyl that they explode one of the main cores of that plant. Have an event. Actually, I have a link in your lecture in which you can go and see a very nice movie or series that is in Netflix, in which you can see in more detail what happened during those days. The point was that this explosion created all over the eastern parts of Europe and spreading of radioactive material that was spreading through the main rivers or the mainstream rivers in all this region. The government of Russia, they didn't mention anything to the rest of the world. They tried to hide the situation, but all the sensors that were installed basically in the western part of Europe, they captured the emissions of the radioactive material, and they start making a blog of what was happening here. Since those days, back in the 80s, there was really a very strong ban of the use of the nuclear power because of the fear that they can produce of the spreading of radioactive material. And that produced a decline of the using nuclear powers as one of the main sources to produce electricity. Then most of the community, of the European community, they went back in order to use coal and natural gas to produce electricity again. Most of that natural gas came from Russia as well. So that was one of the first conventional sources besides to the fossil fuel energy in order to produce electricity. And the reason for that was because the world started to realize that really they need to have some other type of sources of energy that can produce the electricity, but declining the amount of emission of greenhouses in the atmosphere. So one of the first that was used in the last century was the nuclear power. Still today, we are using the nuclear power because really the effect of emissions of greenhouse gases in the planet is lower in order of magnitude compared to the fossil fuel energy, as the oil, which is basically the natural gas, and coal, that is the one that was used at the very beginning of the last century. Actually, today, countries like China are using coal to produce electricity as well. But the cost that we need to pay in terms of emissions of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere is very high, compared with another sources of energy in which we know today that really the emissions of greenhouse gases are lower by order of magnitude compared with this one. Well, this is the kind of discussion that you're going to see in module number 4, how far we are in order to introduce effectively into the market this type of sources of energy that can be balanced or can go over the consumption of the fossil fuel energy. Okay, so we are going to discuss during this module that kind of themes. Also, the characteristics that are involved in producing energy from these sources. In the first chapter of module number 4, we are going to dedicate a lot of time to review of what have to do with the nuclear power. Then, in the chapters that are coming ahead, we are going to invest a lot of time in reviewing all this type of energy. So this is basically what we are going to check in module number 4, is just to describe all the major potential sources of energy that can be used aside to the fossil fuel energy in order to produce one of the most demanding product, that is the electricity. Other part that will be introduced in chapter, this is going to be the last chapter that we're going to review in this module, is the minerals and mining. Minerals are very important because most of the products that you are using today, almost 99% of the products that we are using today on daily basis, they are based in the use of minerals. So we need to have minerals to create many of the products and the artifacts that we use today in our lives. For instance, let me give you an example. Smartphones, laptops, PCs, all that stuff, like TV screens and all that kind of things, they use minerals, okay, that they are found most in the southern part of America and also in one portion of Africa. And we're going to review those one, which is the coltan. Coltan is the fusion of two minerals that is used in the industry to manufacture the chips, electronic chips, that are necessary to produce, for instance, the smartphones, the laptops, and so on. So that triggers industry and practices to find, first of all, to explore, to find those resources, and then to extract those resources, which is the mining. So we are going to review in this chapter what is the consequence that we have into the environment, in the effect of the environment, because of this practice today. Okay. Also, there is a very important economical factor because of this. There are countries in some other parts of the world, very far to the Eastern, Middle East in the world, in which they are very rich in minerals. The amount of minerals or important minerals that those countries have, they today produce or might potentially produce and a very important economical impact. The resources have a value that are estimated to be over $1 trillion, which is a very important amount. So many countries all over the world are putting their eyes in all these regions in the earth to have access to those resources. So this type of several resources of energy that we have, without any doubt, they put on the table today a very tense situation that in the future, in somehow we need to balance in order to use those sources of energy in a very wise way that also balance the emissions that are because of using fossil fuel energy, those greenhouse emissions. So we need to find really a balance between those sources of energy and try to produce a worldwide economic and exploitation agenda for those sources that can make our planet more sustainable. So this module is all about this. We have 3 chapters. Chapters, as you can see here, chapter 23, that is the part of mining. Chapter 22, that are about all those renewable sources of energy. And chapter 20, in which we are going to discuss a little bit more about the fossil fuel energy, but also about some conventional non-renewable sources that the effect of those sources is lower compared to the fossil fuel energy, as I show here in this table. Thank you.